So it's an evening of Shakti, and Shakti is all about joy and exuberance and ananda and everything that brings the rasa, that brings juice to life. So we had a pretty serious opening, and I invite everyone to just relax and get in touch with the fun side of things, okay? We're going to have a short tete-a-tete. Raj and I are going to have a conversation, and I'm going to talk to him about conscious capitalism. He's going to talk to me about Shakti Leadership, and then we're going to get the panel up here. So Raj, what is conscious capitalism?
Well,
from the horse's mouth.
I think Rakesh gave a good sense of that, an introduction to the idea. Conscious capitalism is a different way of looking at business. It's a different mental model. It's a different philosophy about business. Why does a company exist? What is the reason for a business to exist? What should they strive to do? The traditional narrative that has emerged over time has become very narrow, and it's rather what we would call selfish and instrumental as well. That the only purpose of business is to make money, that it's only really about the owners and the shareholders who matter, and that our only responsibility is to make money, and we don't look at all of the other ways in which businesses actually impact our lives in multiple ways. So business is about the real lives of real people. As Herb Kelleher said, the business of business is people. And in many ways, we've forgotten that. So what we're trying to do with this idea of conscious capitalism is to reconnect business with its real essence and to bring higher consciousness to it. And to say that when we approach this phenomenal idea, this idea of free markets and free people, what it has done for humanity over the last 200 years, which far exceeds anything that came before, where every aspect of our existence has been enriched. Our lifespans have more than doubled. Our per capita incomes have gone up 15 times. Right? And many other literacy has gone from 10% to 90%, etc. So capitalism and free markets and freedom has done a lot, but we can do so much more if we bring higher consciousness to it. And what does that look like? So we've created these 4 simple pillars, or what we call tenets of conscious capitalism. First, with the idea of higher purpose. So there should be a reason to exist for a business that goes beyond making money. They need to make money in order to survive and grow. But it's like saying we need red blood cells in order to live. That should not mean that our purpose is to produce as many red blood cells as possible, right? So likewise for a business, the purpose should be something that you use the profits in order to achieve that impact. And that's how you grow and have a bigger and bigger impact in a chosen area. Something that is needed in the world, something that brings healing and joy to the world and to customers and other stakeholders. So a higher purpose beyond profit. The second is the idea that it's not just about shareholders. The business is like a living, interconnected, interdependent system that includes customers and employees and communities and suppliers and investors and many others who are touched by the business and who impact the business. And we consciously look to create value for everybody. We don't treat some as a means and others as an end. Everybody's well-being is important. All the stakeholders are ends in themselves. And how do we create not only balance, but actually integrate their interests together so we get not trade-offs, but we get synergy. We get win, 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 win outcomes. How do we do business in a way that everybody wins? And it can be done because companies are actually doing it. And the third is leadership. And again, Rakesh touched upon this. Leaders who actually care about the purpose of the enterprise and care about people. They're not all about their own power and their own personal enrichment, right? Who actually are there to mentor, motivate, develop, and inspire people and not use carrots and sticks and command and control, etc. So leaders who are truly evolved human beings with spiritual intelligence and emotional intelligence and systems intelligence, along with all the other qualities. And including, by the way, the blend of masculine and feminine, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. And lastly, the cultures of these companies are built upon trust and authenticity, and most importantly, caring. These companies combine self-interest and caring, which is the other key dimension of human beings. And I think capitalism, traditional capitalism, left that part out. It was built on one pillar of self-interest alone. And that can only take you so far, and that results in all kinds of negative consequences, which then led to unions and socialism and communism and Marxism. All of that really came out of an unconscious approach to business, which left out this aspect of human beings, which is about caring. So that's really how it works. That these four pillars really integrate and work together. They all support each other. And when you do that, extraordinarily outcomes result, as we will talk about.
So how is it relevant to India now?
Well, first of all, we believe it is globally relevant. I don't think there's any place in the world where it's not relevant. Business operates everywhere. Business has multiple impacts on people's lives everywhere. I do believe that in India there are several ways in which this is especially relevant and important. One is, of course, the whole idea of consciousness is something that is at the heart of what India is about. So we talk about conscious capitalism. America is the home of capitalism. India is the fountain of consciousness. And we have a lot to offer. So it's not just about this idea coming here. It's really this idea getting enriched and sourcing a lot of the wisdom from the Indian tradition and the ancient wisdom that has been with us as part of our heritage to share with the world. Also, India has great vulnerabilities. We have a lot of people who are on the edge, between making it and not making it. We have an environment that is an ecosystem that is severely under pressure with our population and the landmass and so forth. So we really cannot afford the negative side effects, so to speak, of a traditional way of doing business, where yes, we make some wealth and we offer great jobs, but at the same time we destroy ecosystems and we destroy people's health and well-being and so forth. We simply we can less afford that than even other places can. So I think that's the second element. The third is, we're on this journey for the last 25 years of opening up and embracing more of this economic freedom. And some people say it needs to take multiple decades before we get to this level of thinking about capitalism. But I say, why go through the intermediate stages? Why not leapfrog? Just as we did in IT and telecom. There's no reason to make the same mistakes that other people are now recognizing that was not a productive way to be. We can go directly to this approach, which again, as I said, very much in harmony with ancient wisdom.
So the question in the room always is, yes, it's all very good to be good, but do we make money? So what are the benefits of conscious capitalism?
Well, so that is one of the interesting things about this. These are companies that are not focused on profit maximization. They're focused on creating value for everybody and making a difference in the world. But ironically, these companies actually are more profitable over the long term than a traditional company that is purely focused on profit maximization. It's like Viktor Frankl said, happiness cannot be pursued. Those people who pursue happiness, really all they're pursuing is pleasure, and they're not really truly deeply happy. Happiness ensues. It is the outcome of living a life of meaning and purpose, doing work that matters, loving without condition, and finding meaning in our suffering. Businesses likewise pursue profits, but profits cannot be pursued. Profits are the outcome of doing a business based on a real and authentic, important purpose, creating conditions of love and care for all stakeholders, and growing from adversity. So in our research, where I wrote this book some years ago in 2007, and the second edition, Firms of India, and we discovered companies that operated this way, somewhat by accident, but we discovered these principles. And at the end of that, when we did the financial analysis, our expectation was that because these companies pay their people better, they provide better benefits, healthcare, for example, much better than the average company. They provide great care for their customers. They pay their suppliers well. They don't squeeze them. They invest in their communities. They invest in the environment. And they pay taxes at a higher rate. So we thought maybe there's a little less money left over at the end of the day for investors, but overall they're creating a lot of value. What we actually found was that these companies outperformed the market dramatically. It was 9-1 over a 10-year period in the original book, and now with an extended research that we added more companies into this, 14-1 over a 15-year period. So there's something dramatic here in terms of value creation. This is not, a zero-sum game. Business is the ultimate win-win-win game, right? If you do it right, if you align all the levers, if you have people who passionately care about what they're doing, who are innovative and creative, customers who are loyal and spread word of mouth, suppliers who are world-class, communities that welcome and embrace, all of those things come together. It's like the universe wants you to succeed. Everybody is on your side in these businesses. And you can see then the outperformance. So these companies make a lot of money. And I want to emphasize that, profit is a social good. There's nothing wrong with profit. Without profits, we don't have taxes. We don't have money to spend on schools and infrastructure and safety and all the rest of it, right? Ultimately, that has to come from value that was generated and created by a business somewhere. But it matters a great deal how you make the money. I think that's very, very important. Because you can make the money by squeezing your employees and squeezing your suppliers and externalizing costs onto society and onto future generations. That's one way to make money. That's not a business, that's a parasite. Businesses take a certain set of resources and actually multiply them and create value out of that. So these businesses not only make financial wealth, they create financial wealth, but like all businesses, it's possible to destroy and create wealth. Right? It's not just financial, we don't live by money alone, right? Intellectual capital, all the breakthroughs, the patents, it's the impact on society, the amount of trust and cohesion we have. It's the impact on our emotional state, operating from love and care rather than fear and stress. It's the impact in terms of our spiritual well-being, having meaning and purpose in our lives through our work. It's the impact on the culture, what kind of values, what kind of lifestyles do we promote through advertising and so forth. It's the impact on our bodies, and it's the impact on the environment. These are all the consequences of how we operate, and a conscious business actually seeks to, and most of them do, succeed in creating positive wealth on all these dimensions for all their stakeholders. And a traditional business will say, we're all about making money, and everything else that happens is just a side effect. And as we know, side effects don't really matter, and as we know, side effects tend to be negative. Well, the reality is there's no such thing as a side effect. Okay? We do things and there are effects. And all the effects matter, and conscious businesses seek to operate with a spectrum of positive effects. So that's the most wonderful thing about this, right? It's not about trade-offs. It's not about saying you can be a good company and nice to people, or you can make a lot of money. This is about saying when you align everything together, all of these outcomes result. They all ensue.
So the question within the room, which we know is, the undiscussable question. It's all very well, but what if we operate in an unconscious system? The system is so corrupt. Our context is full of so many blockages. How do we even get to these ideals?
Well, clearly the context can be challenging, obviously here and in many other countries in the world too. But even in those contexts, there are companies that are doing it right, in the right way. So I think it can be a cop-out to say, well, we cannot operate consciously because we are in this particular environment, right? I think what's our symbol? We have the lotus, and that grows in any kind of conditions, right? We have companies like the Tatas who have been doing this for 130 years through all kinds of conditions. I remember when I graduated high school, the marginal income tax rate here was 97.5%. Okay? I mean, believe it or not, in 1974. So there are ways in which one can still operate in the right way despite the circumstances. But I think beyond that, there is a responsibility for businesses to actually take a lead in changing that system. We're not just victims. We have to be creators, right? And recognize that businesses have enormous power, and collectively they can exercise huge impact, or they can have a huge impact on the direction that our society takes. A positive, constructive impact on how the government operates, for example. It's not about trying to get the best kind of regulation and the best deals. That's crony capitalism, if you try to use the government to advance your own interests. But if you actually work with governments to enact sound policy that is about the public good, and that benefits good companies as well at the same time. It's a broader definition of self-interest, a broader definition of self, and a broader definition of interest. And I think we have to operate in that way. We have to be part of the solution of improving that system. We have to take responsibility. We can't, simply use that as an excuse, I believe.
So as with everything, it begins with leadership, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, so let's talk about this idea of Shakti. I had been thinking about this notion of the rise of feminine values for quite some time. I had observed it in firms of endearment. There was so much heart and emotion tied up with that story of those companies. I remember my co-author and I would have tears in our eyes, as we wrote that book, because of the stories that we were uncovering, and say, there's just a lot of these kinds of things that you don't associate with business. They talk about love and caring and compassion and joy and so forth. So we saw that in those leaders, even though most of them were men, but they embody these so-called feminine qualities. And then you had this idea of Shakti that you were writing this column on. So talk to us about Shakti. For many people here may not understand that idea. Yeah. And then what does it have to do with leadership?
Yes. So growing up, it was all about who's in power, right? All conversations, newspapers, TV shows, everything is like who's in power. It's like who's top of the pyramid. Did you get to become CEO? Are you vice president? Did you get elected to be chief minister? I just realized this whole game was about power, And yet, this was such a privilege-based power. One fine day when that got taken from you, if your title got taken from you, you wandered around like a ghost in the corridors of your home. So there was something deeply wrong, and I felt it very deeply. And when I came to yoga, I discovered there is this amazing force that flows through you when you are present, when you know how to step back from your ego-based sense of not being good enough or fears and anxieties. When you can step back from that, there is this amazing state of flow and energy that is available to you, and that is called Shakti. And Shakti is the ultimate power. And here we are talking about who's in power, who's in power. And when we are like fish drowning or not drowning, we are like fish dying of thirst when we are actually swimming in water. So that's where the idea really came to me, Raj, saying, what is leadership? Leadership is about the exercise of power to achieve a desired outcome. No one's going to follow you if you don't have power to lead, right? So leadership is about power. So how about getting leaders to tap into the power that's moving evolution itself, right? There is the power that's growing our nails, that's moving the cosmos. This thing is evolving anyway. Things I learned from Fatherland Sea. Evolution is happening anyway, from minerals to plants to animals to humans. There is this force that is at work. It's a river that's going on. What if we could put ourselves in accord with that, tap into that? And now you are an agent of that flow. And you literally have evolution backing you. It's got your back, right? So that broadly is the idea of power. And it takes, of course, work. You're not going to be able to just have your power handed to you on a platter. And I often say when people, one of the kind of criticisms that comes back with this work is, you know, it's hard work, Nilima. It's hard work. Come on. It's so much easier to just be aggressive and push and get things done the traditional, typical way. You know, your stuff is a bit, it's a reach too far. And I say to them, you know what? If your current strategies are working, if your current coping strategies are getting you the results, then you don't need Shakti leadership. Shakti leadership comes to you when everything you have tried doesn't work anymore, and you suddenly encounter your real powerlessness. It happened to us when Vijay went through his cancer. It's happened to all of us, right? Suddenly, life gives you a curveball, and all your titles, all your money, nothing really is going to get you from point A to point B. Then you have to sit and come up with a totally different way of being and doing. That's where I came to Shakti, and that's, in a nutshell, what is true power.
Wonderful. And I think we took a little bit of a risk with our publishers urging in the US to use Shakti in the title. I mean, it was something that was embedded in the idea. And they said, you know, it's time to introduce this Indian idea to the world. Everybody knows yoga, and everybody knows karma, and everybody knows whatever else, right, from India. And so this, we're seeing if this can be the next big idea that can be understood even outside here. And we'll see. It's a little bit of a calculated risk. But talk about the leadership model, which I think is quite powerful and flows beautifully.
Yes.
You know, how does Shakti leadership work?
Yes, so I have some slides as well. I call it the 5 elements of Shakti leadership, the journey through the 5 elements of Shakti leadership, just so you have a handle to remember this when you go back. It begins with presence. Presence is a place where you're no longer in your ego. You have stepped back from your gut, you have nothing to defend. You step back from your heart, you have nothing to promote. And you step back from your head, where you have nothing to fear. When you can step back from these typical places we all exist in when we are stressed, if we can step back and just come into this now moment, we tap into what's called presence. And from presence, you tap into Shakti. Shakti is the flow, the power I was talking about, that is moving through you anyway, which you now access. When you're present and you have the access to that true power moving you, it's really coming from a deeper place, you now know how to cultivate these 3 capacities which are needed for Shakti leadership. The first is wholeness. Are you psychologically whole as a leader? Are you playing from all your possible bases? Or are you only stuck in one? So I call it becoming the wise fool of tough love, right? The wise is your parent self. The fool is your child self that knows how to lighten up and not take itself so seriously. The tough is your inner man, that which knows how to draw those healthy boundaries when needed. And the love is that inner woman. So when you become the wise fool of tough love, you really come into your psychological wholeness. The Holy Family Reunion. And from there, the second capacity is flexing. A situation now may require you to be tough. And the very next leadership moment that comes at you requires you to be love. And then a moment comes where all your wisdom has to be brought to bear. And can you move into that very quickly? And I have learned this the hard way. I know from time to time I'm reminded to lighten up and not take myself so seriously, right? So can I be foolish and childlike and imaginative and playful? Just lighten up. So that ability to flex is a very, very critical leadership quality. And when you have your wholeness and your flexibility, the question arises, am I congruent? Where am I going with all this amazing wholeness and power that I now have flowing through me? Am I on purpose? Do I know my innate nature, my swabhav? And is that aligned with my higher purpose, what we've been talking about? So am I on purpose? Am I congruent? Do I line up? Am I congruent? Now, these are the 5 elements: presence, Shakti, wholeness, flexibility, congruence. And all of this is going to require that you journey. And that is the idea of the heroic journey from Joseph Campbell. Anyone in the audience who's familiar with Joseph Campbell's work? Show of hands. Wonderful, wonderful. I just invite every single person to get that book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which says that to come into your own, right? To become a person of consequence and come into your fullness, you're going to have to make a journey. You're going to have to leave your comfort zone. You're going to encounter some kind of a crisis. You'll have trauma. You're going to face your worst fear. And only on the other side of that lies your power, your gift, by which you are transformed yourself. And then you come back and bring that as an elixir or a gift for the world to also heal through. So that is the hero's journey. So to come into your Shakti is going to require a heroic, courageous heart. It's not going to come to you on a platter. Power has to be earned. Okay? So that in a nutshell was a very simple way to understand. I liked what Rakesh said, that you know what, this is so basic. It's so simple. Why do we have to be reminded and why do we have to write books about this? But this is what's called compressed complexity. We've arrived at this after really doing the journey, living all these, failures, having our strategies not work for us, and then we have to remember we're going to go back to the basics. A friend of mine said, if we never leave the basics, we never have to go back to them. So here we are. Does that answer you, Raj?
Absolutely.